There we go. Let's do this bit real quick. And then if you give me like 3 seconds, we'll go live on the radio. And there we are. And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve-Poikonen. I am joined by my better than your co-host, Glory Jones. What's happening, Jones? How you doing?
It's happening. I'm doing.
Yeah, kind of like that. We got a hell of a show this morning. We're going to be joined very shortly by the one and only Vanessa Beeley. She'll be coming to us from Damascus, Syria. Uh, is it levels thing? I don't know.
I can't hear you. It's not coming out.
Well, that sucks.
Hit disconnect and reconnect.
Okay, let's do that again. We're having a couple of issues over here on Aftermath FM. I don't know. Uh, Hopefully we get that shit figured out. We had a little confusion last week. Had a meeting. Hopefully got it sorted, but I do not know. I do not know.
We do it live.
It's true on multiple platforms as often as we can. I don't know, man. Oh, hey, there we go. That sounds like radio. So, with that in mind,
It's not picking up your mic.
oh, it's still not picking up my mic,
I'm so sick of this fucking app, dude.
right? I don't even know what to do about that. I really don't. There's a lot of sound in my ear, though. There's Beeley.
I don't know. Their app sucks.
All right. Well,
Disconnect. Fuck it.
okay.
Hi, Vanessa.
Sorry, I look like I'm dressed for the Arctic. We don't have any electricity and it's cold.
It's all good.
Yeah, dude. It's cold and wet here, that's for sure. Beeley, it's good to see you. I got freaked out the other week when you messaged me and told me that you had been detained at Heathrow for the better part of half a day. And it's all well, it kind of converges on a number of different things that we've had you on to talk about over the last couple of years anyway. So let's just jump right into it. You went to your native country of merry old England. Like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and you flew into Heathrow and take it away.
Yeah, I flew into Heathrow on a flight from Beirut, and as I came off, the kind of little weird tunnel things they have as you come off the plane. And literally at the end of the tunnel, there was a passport check. So I was like, okay, had my passport ready. At which point the passport guy handed my passport to this other guy. And suddenly I was like, we're the anti-terrorism police. I was like, you have to be kidding me. I haven't slept. I've done all the freaking corona shit. Like, seriously? And the first thing they asked me, so this is as everyone else is coming off as well. So, of course, I start to make a scene. I'm pretty pissed off at this point. Two police officers from memory, a woman and a guy. And the first thing they asked me is to surrender my mobile phone. Of course, I refused. I was just like, you have to be kidding me. I'm not giving you my mobile phone. So they were like, okay, well, if you're not prepared to give us the mobile phone, then we'll arrest you. And I'm like, oh, shit, seriously? And at this point, I just went on a rant, I think. I was just telling them, this is a fucking police state. The UK is a police state, blah, blah, blah. And then they took me off to a meeting room. They informed me that I could call a solicitor, or I had the right to inform someone. I decided against informing anyone because I thought, well, I'm not going to give them any names of my nearest and dearest or phone numbers or indication as to where I'm going, etc. I mean, I do have to say, and I have to say throughout the 6 hours that I was sat with them, and it was basically two main officers, and then their supervisors kept coming in to read me my rights at 2-hour intervals, I think. The two police officers were very courteous, and actually, a lot of the time we were having quite a laugh because I was held under Section 3 of the Anti-Terrorism Act, which is, according to them, I was being held because I had an intention to commit a hostile act. And when I asked them what the hostile act was, they said, well, reporting state secrets to foreign intelligence agencies. I mean, really, at which point I was just like, okay, well, give me the secrets and give me a chance to report them to
Yeah.
you know. And basically, in the end, I decided I didn't really have a solicitor in mind that I could call because I obviously wasn't expecting any of this shit. And as I said to them, it's cool. I don't have anything to hide. Everything that, all my opinions, all of my research is public property anyway. Nothing is clandestine or hidden. My opinions are very out there. And at that point, she said, "Yeah, I've been looking at your Twitter. I've been looking into you on Google." I said, "Well, Google's a mistake because if you do a search on my name, you'll just come up with all the anti reports."
Yeah, like the Wikipedia article.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Wikipedia,
right.
BBC,
The Philip Cross
CNN.
who Vanessa. Yeah.
My biggest stalker, Chris York of Huffington Post, etc., etc. You know. So yeah, God, it was a 6-hour marathon. I mean, the thing is, I hadn't slept. I'd left Damascus at 1 a.m., driven to Beirut, waited 3 hours in security in Beirut just to get through all the, PCR paperwork shit. Got on the plane, landed, just then had 6 hours of, I mean, it was just bizarre. Then they went and got my suitcase. Brought that back, and then I had 5 police officers come in to go through my suitcase in front of me, my suitcase and my hand luggage bag. They took my mobile phone, of course, and they downloaded everything because they had that for 6 hours, and that was one of the reasons that I had to wait 6 hours to get my phone back. I had to give DNA, fingerprints, have my photo taken. So while this wasn't, an official arrest or detention, because apparently under that act, they can detain you. They don't even have to have a suspicion in order to detain you. I later found out from the same firm that represent Julian Assange, who very kindly on recommendation stepped in to kind of follow up for me. And they are going to try to find out what's happened to all my information, because as they say, there's not enough protection for journalists. Of course there isn't. The whole point is that this new legislation is to criminalize journalists that are challenging any establishment narratives, whether it's Syria, whether it's COVID. It doesn't really matter what it is. If you're going against the state, then you can be picked up and interrogated, basically. And of course, this is part of the whole kind of Julian Assange effect, that journalists are going to be heavily penalized and heavily punished for exposing the kind of grubby underbelly of particularly the UK government state, but for sure in America and in Europe, it's going to be the same thing.
So I have up on screen here right now a picture of a pamphlet that you sent me. And this is I'm not kidding. This is the pamphlet the anti-terrorism police gave you while
Yeah.
you were being detained. Like you're probably wondering why you're in the penalty box. You know, here's a handy explanatory pamphlet. Oh, you know, like that is honestly the most British thing I've ever heard. I told you that before. Just freaking hilarious. But I mean, this is wild shit. Stopping question you come from Schedule 3 to the Counterterrorism and Border Security Act. The use of this legislation is regularly and independently reviewed. I mean,
Sure.
we're gonna find out, right?
Sure.
But I mean, the last line there, the power to stop, question, search, and if necessary, detain persons under Schedule 3 does not require prior authority or any suspicion.
And you know, I have to say, although the officers themselves were very respectful, very courteous, and also quite open to what I was saying, because I certainly didn't hold back. I basically said to them exactly what I say in all my articles, that if they should be investigating anyone for the support and sponsorship of terrorism, it should be the British government. They're not me. You know, basically what I'm doing is exposing the British government involvement and sponsorship of terrorism, particularly in Syria, but extending into Yemen, for example, Iraq, etc. And you know, they kind of like, they were nodding. They asked me specifically about the white helmets. And what I based my views on.
Really? I would love to talk to
Thank you.
you all day long.
Why, thank you, good sir.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, exactly. I can. You know, she was struggling to write as fast as I was talking at this point, because I mean, the crazy thing is she's handwriting my responses, right? So the majority of them were not really there, but that's another thing. The whole interview was recorded. So 6 hours, which included kind of fill-in conversations with other police officers about what music I like, about what books I last read. And at one point, I kind of said to one of them, we're still recording this, right? And at one point, actually, I had a separate officer come in who hadn't been part of the whole interview process. And this was kind of interesting. And I have to say, this is also recorded, although I'm quite sure it'll be mysteriously edited out of any final recording that ever appears anywhere. He was visibly kind of pissed off and complaining about his job. So I said to him, okay, so what's the most frustrating thing about your job? And he proceeded to basically tell me that he's fed up with the fact that they pinpoint terrorists or extremists trying to enter the country. They are then overruled, presumably by the Home Office, although he didn't actually say that, but I'm guessing that's who would overrule the anti-terrorism police force. They're then given a UK passport. They then go back to, for example, Syria, and bring their entire family back to the UK. And when they're pulled over again, they wave their British passport at them and say, well, there's nothing you can do, mate. So I then pushed it and I said, well, yeah, what about the 425 ISIS terrorists that we know have entered the UK? And basically, you don't know where they are.
That's a good question.
So he said, yeah, there's more than that. That was his first response. And he also said, and while we're talking about this, just think about all those that are landing from the boats from France onto UK soil, and we don't know who they are. We don't know what their ideology is, how radicalized they are, etc., etc.
I want to interject for a moment, Vanessa, just to point out that how many hours into this is this conversation taking place?
Oh, this was quite towards the end, because I think at this point I was just waiting for the phone for them to finish stealing all my information from my mobile phone. And he came in, like, because they had to have an officer with me at all times. They couldn't leave me alone in the room.
Okay, so I've got I've got two scenarios in my head, because this is an anti-terrorism police officer hours into holding known rogue journalist Vanessa Beeley. So he comes in to complain to you, or opens up a little bit to you. Is this like, I mean, because he knows who you are, clearly.
Well,
right?
no, he said he didn't. He said he didn't, because he hadn't been involved.
So either way, he knows he's speaking to the press. So is it a confessional thing, or is it deliberate misinformation to, rogue journalist Vanessa Beeley?
I don't think it was deliberate misinformation, because I can generally read people quite well, and he was really pissed off.
Okay.
He hadn't been involved from the beginning. He actually, no, because he had just come on shift, so he hadn't known anything that was going on before that. So actually, he didn't look at my file. He didn't know who I was, in theory. He came in as a stopgap for the one of the two main police officers to go and get a cup of tea and to go and check where they were with my phone. But the interesting thing, because one of the most sort of humiliating aspects of the whole thing, of course, was to have to give your full fingerprints. I mean, I'm not just talking, your thumbprint. You have to do your whole palm, fingerprints, side, etc., and DNA and photograph. And of course, the photograph is exactly like the prisoner photos. And I was told after by the Assange lawyers that basically the police officers hadn't made it clear that I could have refused to give them any of that. They were very kind of disingenuous about how they asked. It appeared as if, as part of the detention, they had the right to do that, and I didn't have the right to refuse it. But in reality, I don't think that is the case. The other case, as I said, is what they're trying to do is to retrieve all the information from my phone on the basis I'm a journalist. I might have sources on the phone. I might have information that's confidential, etc., etc., etc. But as we know, the rights of journalists, the rights of human beings, the rights of anyone that challenges power are irrelevant when it comes to shutting them up. We know that from the Julian Assange case, from Craig Murray, from Daniel Hale, etc., etc. Donziger. I mean, there's countless cases where justice is just a complete farce. The other interesting thing is, and this came in pretty much at the end of the questions, was the names they brought up, which were Russian officials, at which point I did burst out laughing, because this was the name that was brought up in the sting operation that was run against Paul McKeague, an academic that was part of the working group on Syria and a big part of the OPCW investigation. And the sting operation was carried out by CJIR, and I've just forgotten what that stands for, but CJIR basically are allegedly documenting all the cases of torture and abuse by, of course, the Syrian government and the Syrian intelligence agencies. And CJIR, if people remember, they ran a sting campaign or a sting operation against Paul McKeague, sending someone in to basically pretend to be a Russian agent to get the confidence of Paul McKeague and to get him to reveal God knows what. I mean, the moral decrepitude of this operation anyway, because they didn't believe that Paul McKeague had committed a crime, which is the only instance in which a sting operation has any ethical kind of grounding, right? They just did it to try and find things out about his colleagues. And for some reason, during the email exchange, Paul McKeague made a claim that myself and Piers Robinson could be contacted through this particular Russian UN official, which was just kind of hilarious, because I said, well, one, I've never spoken to him. Two, how on earth would I be contacted through a Russian official? And three, he's a UN official, so he's not exactly some kind of backstreet, spy that's kind of, it's ridiculous. And after kind of various back and forth email exchanges, Chloe Hadjimathieu, of course, of the famous Mayday series smear campaign against me, had to admit on email to me that she had never asked me to respond to that claim, because in her article, her kind of puff piece on the whole sting operation, she had claimed that she had contacted me and I hadn't responded, reference this idea that I was in direct contact, or I could be contacted through this Russian official. She never contacted me, so she basically retracted that on email, and she changed the wording of the article, but without putting an update or without putting an apology for having basically lied in the article, which of course is BBC style. That's their rigorous journalism, right? And Paul McKeague actually wrote to the BBC, to Chloe, to retract the claim that he made. And this I explained to the anti-terrorism police. I mean, I was laughing at this point. I said, okay, I know where this has come from. It's either come from the BBC or it's come from William Wiley, who heads up CJER, who's a pretty shadowy operator, was formerly involved in the former Yugoslavia case, I think also in Rwanda, and in the Saddam Hussein defense case. But he has a pretty kind of murky past. He's also connected to Stephen Rapp. The two of them were instrumental in producing the evidence for the Caesar report, which of course is being used to impose the most savage, unprecedented savage sanctions on Syria. So either the BBC or Wiley himself were involved in instigating this detention, in my opinion, and that has been confirmed by, let's say, people who know Wiley and know how he operates. So
he's the guy who was doing really dirty shit in the Congo. So I wouldn't put it past him to have it out for anybody was in the business of finding out what nefarious figures in the UK and other Western governments were doing. Yeah.
He's Canadian, I think, but he's got pretty strong ties to US State Department, CIA, and probably by default British intelligence agencies. And certainly the fact that CJER ran the sting operation and it was Chloe who wrote up the article, blah, 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 to follow up. So, the connection is pretty strong. I mean, I'm actually working now on expanding my work on the whole network, including new information on James Lemessurier, the founder of the White Helmets. So they haven't exactly stopped me. They've just encouraged me to go further.
I suffer from the same affliction where if you punch me in the face, I'm probably going to come harder at you until I don't get up anymore. That's just kind of, the overlap between like what is happening specifically to you in this case and what happened to Julian Assange 12 years ago when he got detained by British police and then wound up, doing a little bit of time just sitting in a jail where they were putting metal shavings in his food and screwing his teeth up, all this kind of stuff. But there's been an escalation in the war on journalists, while at the same time we've got this ridiculous democracy summit that was going on. We had a Nobel Peace Prize in journalism winner in her acceptance speech for the award going off on how the job of the media has got to be better narrative management and like better filtration of information in the digital space. This is insane. I'll pull the speech, Jones. It's wild.
Don't really want to listen to it.
We don't have to listen to it. I'll just highlight the section or something like that. But
yeah. No. Well, plus Human Rights Day on December 10th.
Oh.
Yeah. Those holidays always piss me off, especially Human Rights Day in particular. But yeah, the whole democracy, human rights, justice, the whole thing is a facade, really. Like, because when it comes to it, it's conditional ultimately for the West. Conditional being, oh well, the oligarchs can have democracy. We can ensure that pedophiles get justice for them, not for their victims. CIA spooks and war criminals, oh, they're good to go. They can have all the freedom they want. But nope. Everybody else go fuck yourself.
She goes right to January 6th when she starts going in on social media. The attacks against us in Rappler began 5 years ago, and we demanded an end to impunity on two fronts. Duarte's drug war and Zuckerberg. Noble. However, it's only gotten worse today. Silicon Valley sins came home to roost in the United States on January 6th with mob violence on Capitol Hill. What happens on social media doesn't stay on social media. She goes through and quite literally begs for narrative management. In relation to social media, I've said it repeatedly over the last 5 years, just the last 5 years specifically. Without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without trust, we have no shared reality, no democracy, and it becomes impossible to deal with the existential problems of our time. Yeah. I get wanting to go after social media companies. I get wanting to battle ruthless, tyrannical presidents and their escalated war on drugs. What I don't get is going, you know what we need to do? We need to make sure that only the information we agree with gets to people.
Exactly. That's the whole point. Also going back, because in the UK, it's the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, who we know has close ties to Israel, of course, who's cracking down on the terror threat and the terrorism-related threats to the UK, warning of the effect that COVID-19 could have on extremism. And I'm reading here from a June 2021 report where she actually says, bear in mind, it's the government that has created the hell and devastation of lockdowns. But she says, we've also had the pandemic. Obviously, we've had a year of people being locked down. And we see all sorts of issues in terms of mental health, for example. And we have to look at a wide range of environmental factors that could act as triggers when it comes to terrorism type behavior and the threats to individuals and also to society. So yeah, let's create the environment in which people become desperate, let's then radicalize them, and then let's accuse them of terrorism, right? When we've instrumentalized terrorism and radicalization for decades against the countries that we want to bring to heel, or we want to bring under our control, or we want to destroy. I mean, it's just, it's the hypocrisy. And the thing is, it's all wrapped up in this kind of really well packaged, well marketed, well presented exterior. It's extraordinary, you know. I mean, whether it's Syria, whether it's COVID, whether it's Assange, whether it's Libya, whether it's Iraq, Venezuela, etc., etc. The team, the complex that is behind the marketing of the state position on this is just extraordinary. So this whole thing of the terror threat, right? So, for example, me, I'm a threat to national security. Not quite sure why. I'm actually highlighting the threat that the state is to national security generally, right? It's thanks to the state that terrorism is now on British soil, because it's been fostered and sponsored and supported by the British state for decades. And yeah, it will carry out terror attacks, but who's responsible for this? And it's like I said to the police, you know, I'm not the only one saying this. I'm not the only one talking about the white helmets. I'm not the only one talking about the UK state responsibility for war globally. Right. You know, I'm not alone in this.
The one in our office,
people
right?
Talking about it.
They were taught that you were the one in their office. You know, and I mean, yeah, you have been ruthlessly singled out by you know, a very agenda-driven puppet in the BBC, and she shouldn't have started shit if she didn't want any, you know, like, I mean, just she didn't such an embarrassingly bad job that she had to issue a retraction. But I mean, that's,
you know, she had to issue a retraction. She issued quite a few retractions, actually. Over the space of the months that she was getting hysterical with me. I mean, that's the thing. She really couldn't handle the blowback. She became actually pretty hysterical, pretty abusive, pretty ridiculous in her responses. I mean, to the point where she even sent me an email by mistake, right? And then begged me not to publish it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. You know, so yeah, she did a shit job all around. The Mayday series was just, I mean, it was really a train wreck. And she's got some very powerful allies that have kind of shored her up, but she wasn't kind of top shelf material to carry out this sort of hit campaign, really. I'm a bit disappointed.
At least it speaks to the fact that talented people have recognized that the BBC is not where they want to wind up.
$2 for a freaking stenographer.
It's not, dude. Chloe has made herself into a parody, really, of just, you know, what a completely bought series producer would be. Like, if we were doing a you know, kind of a retrospective of how, like, the CIA went and started Radio Free Europe, or went and started Radio Free Asia, or a bunch of the outlets that, you know, sprung up to support their propaganda efforts, you would have a figure like Chloe front and center there. You would. It's like, you can't write this into existence any better than the cartoon that we fucking live in throws it at us. It's wild. Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, any better than, who was it, the New York Times that created a whole ass virtual simulation of the Duma gas attacks to prove that Assad somehow gassed his own people?
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Every NASA simulation we've seen of space.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like, if you remember the Amnesty International report on Sadnaya, the prison where they claimed, I can't remember the numbers now, but I think 50,000 political prisoners were being tortured and blah, blah, blah. And then they had to backtrack and say, well, yeah, actually, it was all simulated in a London studio. And this was after like former inmates had actually countered the report and said, no, this is rubbish. Like, it's not even correct, and there weren't that many, and there were only X number of prisoners, and the majority of them are hardcore Al-Qaeda extremists that we're really quite happy are locked up,
And what was the last thing Amnesty said about Guantanamo Bay? Hold up.
Well, I noticed they still haven't declared Julian Assange a prisoner of conscience, and they hadn't issued a statement as of this morning, after finding out that not only did he have a stroke right before he was supposed to go to court in October, they made him show up.
I read it as he had one yesterday.
No,
I don't know. I think you're wrong on that.
I am not wrong on that.
No, it was before his hearing on the 27th, but the news broke yesterday.
Stella, told people yesterday.
Have Reporters Without Borders covered the assault?
Okay, so here's what I'd like to do with this. I would like to answer that question. I would. But everything else that I think I want to talk about will get us kicked off of YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the link to the Rockfin.
And then I'll go into Reporters Without Borders, because I have.
Well, they had a massive campaign against me. They tried to shut me down in the Geneva Press Club. I can't remember when, 2017. And they headed up the campaign with Syria Campaign and a number of other organizations to actually defund the Geneva Press Club. Can you believe it? Because they were going to have me to do a 10-minute presentation on the White... 10 minutes on the White Helmet.
10 minutes?
10-minute presentation.
You can barely get through James LeMisery's background in 10 minutes. Like,
you'd be surprised what I can fire off in 10 minutes. You
are incredibly impressive. Link to Rockfin is in the YouTube chat. If you are watching us on the YouTube, thank you. But why? They censor us. They roll our view counts back. They don't let us talk about what we want to. We broadcast on Rockfin, Odyssey, DLive, the tweeters, and Twitch. So find us there. We love you guys, but we got to do the rest of the show on an entirely different platform.